Hello fellow air breathers, Sandstorm the Sandstorm here. I recently got blackmailed by Cuphead and Cuphead to make a Cuphead video. And since I spent so much hours on this game, and most of that was spent on the bosses, here is my top 5 best and worst Cuphead bosses. Although I do like the idea behind the fight with Hilda, I found it quite lacking in execution. Basically, Hilda is a blimp who can shoot the word ha as a projectile and turns into zodiac constellations and eventually turns into a moon. I like that idea, I just found the fight quite tedious. Also, one of the zodiacs is easy, but Gemini and Sagittarius are really hard for some reason. Sagittarius shoots an arrow at you surrounded by stars that chase you, and the Gemini phase has this weird orb that shoots lasers. Honestly, the Gemini phase is one of the things that makes this fight so tedious. And that's coming from a Gemini. And the final phase is really easy. Once you learn the attack patterns of the UFOs, it becomes a quick and easy knockout. Which is bad because the last phase is supposed to be the hardest. The reason this is only number 5 is because I like the idea, and the design of Hilda herself is pretty cool. And this is one of my favorite tracks in the game. Phantom Express is one of the final soul contracts you must collect before the fight with King Dice and the Devil. And with everything before it, this is a great boss. The music, the atmosphere, and the boss itself are really cool. You start the fight by battling a blind ghost who shoots eyes out of its hands. Then a skeleton who tries to crush you with his bone hands. 2 heads that shoot lightning out of their mouths. And you eventually fight the train itself, who is galloping like a horse. The fight is fun from beginning to end and the designs are really cool, and the music fits so well. I've always had a fascination with undead things in media because you can do so much with them. Why do you think my second favorite movie of all time is Nightmare Before Christmas? Also, during the fight you ride on a railcar that can be moved by parrying. The level takes full advantage of this by having ghosts and pumpkins fly around the screen dropping parries, moving the cart by itself. Some may find this annoying, but I think it just adds a whole new layer to the fight. My favorite phase is the second. I don't know why, but for all my life I've always liked skeletons. I also like to call him Papyrus. But the reason it's only number 5 is because during the final phase there is fireballs and bone hoops flying around the screen, making it hard to pay attention to the battle. But that pales in comparison to the rest of this great boss, and it definitely deserves a spot on this list. Dr. Cal's robot is really a love it or hate it kinda boss. And I'm more on the hated side. I'm not saying he's bad because he's hard. I'm saying he's bad because he's tedious and unfair. The first phase has you destroying a laser beam on the robot's head, a chest plate that brings out permeable electric walls, and a plate on his stomach that shoots little spaceships. These are tedious enough, but it gets worse. On his second phase his heart sticks out and you have to attack it. Simple enough. But during this, there's bombs that explode, and the explosion has a very far range, so you better not be close to it when you destroy it. There's also the robot's hands which shoot plasma balls and carry a magnet, making you destroying the bombs have a very high chance of you being damaged. And the cherry on top, the robot is shooting nuts and bolts out of its neck, mouth, jaw, chin thing. Then once you finally destroy his heart, you finally make it to the third phase. The third phase is not that bad. Just drop bombs on the robot's flying head while avoiding the bombs. The bombs here are a lot less annoying than phase 2 because there is no magnet or other projectiles. And the fourth phase. I know the fourth phase is bullet hell and some people like that genre, but I'm not a big fan of it. The only games that I like that have bullet hell elements are Undertale and Deltarune. But oh my god, this final phase is one of the worst thing ever. There's bullets everywhere and these electric walls keep spawning. If there are two good things I can say about this fight, it's that the third phase isn't too bad and it's probably the most satisfying knockout in the entire game. Wally Warbles is the best airplane boss in Cuphead for many reasons. In his first phase, you have to avoid the eggs he shoots out of his mouth and the bullets he shoots using his handhead. It's not much but I still think it's epic. The second phase is, even if my least favorite, is what I call Dr. Cal's third phase done right. There is enough space to get through the feathers and there's no stupid things like electric walls. Yes, there is the little birds with the nails taped to their head, but let's be honest, how could you get mad at those things? The third phase is when Wally Jr. appears with his eggs. Although this might be tedious to some, I'm not bothered by it. The eggs give you enough space to fly around them. He also shoots plasma balls at you using his laser gun, but those are all parryable so it's not that bad. And the final phase, and my personal favorite, Wally comes up being held by a stretcher, and uses many attacks, like shooting trash at you using his mouth. Get it? He's trash talking you. And he also gives himself a heart attack to use a heart attack. And two nurse birds shoot pills in the air that are easy to dodge in some circumstances. What I love about this boss is the design, the watercolor background, and especially the music. Once you beat him it takes a pretty dark turn though, as the nurse birds bring out saltchukers and start salting Wally, as if they are going to eat him. But hey, at least they aren't the only cannibals on this list. Although having a great music track, the fight with Ribby and Croaks is one of the most tedious. The first phase is you have to shoot fireflies and jump over fireballs, some being parryable. This phase isn't that bad, unless you're inexpert. If you're inexpert this phase sucks. Phase 2 is Croaks turning into a fan and Ribby shooting orbs and fireballs. Both are a pain to dodge, but the fireballs are hellish. It blows you right into the flames 90% of the time. The fan makes this phase super unfair. Eventually, they fuse into a giant slot machine. You can get hit by one of 3 attacks: Snake, Bison, or Tiger. And guess what? They're all awful. Snake is easy at first, but as it speeds up it's very easy to fall off and get stuck in the spikes. Bison is avoiding flames. It's okay in regular, but in expert it's awful. If you're near the end and you have to jump over one, it goes so fast that it's very likely you'll get hit by either spikes or fire. Tiger is terrible. Small orbs bounce out of platforms that slide across the room. Not to mention the coins you have to avoid. They are easy in regular but are hard as heck to avoid in expert. But once I finally beat this boss in expert, I was happy knowing I never had to go back to it again. I do like the Street Fighter homages in this fight though. Ribby and Croaks themselves are like frog versions of Ryu and Ken.
Mr. King Dice, I'm the gamest in the land. I never play nice, I'm the devil's right-hand man. I can't let you pass, 'cause you ain't done everything.
The fight with Werner Wehrman doesn't seem all too special at first, but when you start using the parry floorboards to jump over him it really starts to get good. The first phase starts with one of two attacks, bombs or a bunch of debris. Some of the debris is able to be parried, so you get your first parry pretty easily. The bombs, although easy to avoid, are way better than one specific robot boss that uses bombs. After that, Werner will throw out parryable floorboards, used to jump over him, or you dash right through him if you are like me and use smoke dash for literally everything. The second phase has Werner going up and down across the two levels of platforms you can be on, unleashing fire, while on the other platform you are switching between sides trying to avoid bottle caps from the side that do damage. I find this to be one of the best mechanics in the game. After that, Tom the cat eats Werner and claws around the room, making parts of the roof fall and you have to avoid. And ghosts can also come from the cat's mouth. After getting a satisfying knockout, you get the reveal that Werner was controlling Tom, meaning that Werner must have eaten the mice. Remember how I said earlier how the two nurse birds weren't the only cannibals on the list? This was the other cannibal. I love the design of this stage. It's probably my favorite when it comes to atmosphere. The music track that plays is my third favorite in the game, and the design of Werner and the cat were pretty epic. Everyone knew she was gonna be on this list. She's near the top on everyone's worst Cuphead bosses list, and she was on the thumbnail. The fight with Rumor Bottoms. What can I say that hasn't already been said? The first phase has you fighting some B-cop guy who used bombs that explode and spread across the screen. If you are close to the bombs once they explode, most likely you'll take damage. There is also some depressed bee workers that fly around the screen. The second phase has you avoiding 3 attacks. Her spitting bullet bill-like things at you that are extremely unfair, and you have to plan way ahead the path to take to not get hit. Triangles that shoot tiny triangles. I know this attack has become kinda a meme in the Cuphead community for everyone hating it, but it's still awful. It shoots 3 times, and it looks like it'll be easy to dodge, but it really isn't. And parry orbs that follow the player for way too long. Not to mention there is 2 of them. After all that, Rumor has a book and learns a spell to turn her into an airplane kinda thing. All attacks here are extremely unfair. She shoots fists that fly around the screen, and the buzzsaw attack has her using her hand, which turned into a saw to cut across half the screen. It's very unpredictable, and it gives you barely enough time to make it across. Not to mention she's at the bottom of the screen. So if you don't have Seeker or Lobber, this phase takes forever. And the worst part, this is an auto-scroll level. The only things I like this the watercolor background and the music. But besides that, this fight is very unfair, and is definitely the second worst in the game. Now, I've been talking about how bad Rumor is for such a long time. What other boss could possibly be worse? Let's all take a moment to appreciate how amazing Cagney Carnation's dance is. Truly a beautiful dancer. Cagney's first phase has you avoiding his head, which can stretch over or under the floating platforms, and it actually gives you a hint to tell you which side he's going to stretch his head to, so it's not super unpredictable. He also shoots out seeds. Some can be parried. These bring out tiny plant creatures which are not very tedious at all, and can be defeated in a few hits, also being generous enough to give you parries. His third attack has him shooting either seed things and the other has him shooting something. Neither are tedious or annoying, and sometimes he gives you an extra challenge by shooting both at the same time. Unlike Dr. Cal's robot though, these are fair and actually pretty possible to avoid. The second and final phase has him turning into a manic, and he fuses with the ground to unleash thorns on the platforms and small plant things that, if they hit you, make you dizzy, which is a good reference to Yoshi's Island. This is most likely the final boss you'll fight in the first Isle, and after fights like Hildebert or Ribby and Croaks, it's nice to actually have a really good fight. But let's be honest, we all know the reason he's this high on the list. The music track that plays in the background is what makes this fight so spectacular. Without the music, this fight would probably be at like 4th. but with it, it makes this truly the second best boss in Cuphead. Now, I've been going on about Cagney for so long, what could possibly be better? Well, now that we are close to the number 1s, Cuphead will go speak to King Dice and you'll see what the best and worst bosses are. Yes, in my personal opinion, the worst boss in Cuphead is Beppy the Clown. Although I like the music and the background, this fight is just so awful that it distracts me from any redeeming qualities. During the first phase you have to jump over Beppy's clown car. There is no evident way of knowing the ducks will do damage. Even worse, some ducks drop fire light bulbs. Why can't just the light bulbs do damage and not the ducks? Some ducks can be parried though, which is cool, I guess. Then the second phase introduces the worst part of the battle, the train. The train gets in the way when you're trying to avoid the super annoying dog balloons. Also, trying to parry the nose makes you go into midair, making you an easy target for the dogs. The third phase has Beppy riding a carousel horse that can shoot two kinds of horseshoes. Green ones that go up and down, and gold ones that fall and crash on the ground. This phase is nearly impossible without the smoke bomb. Especially when you have to jump over the train passengers, or jump onto the train. Not to mention Beppy stays on one side of the screen, so you have to run forward very quickly to avoid the horseshoes. This phase is extremely unfair. Beppy's final phase has him turning into a carousel and now the train goes really fast, which is annoying because on my first few tries I thought I could just jump over the passengers as always. Actually, you have some platforms to stand on. Eventually, Beppy spits out baseball throwing penguins. The baseballs fly around the screen. You can go down onto the floor and shoot the penguins, but you don't do damage to the boss. Also, the train can randomly come running you over. Now here's how to fix this boss. The first phase shouldn't have all the ducks doing damage and only the ones that drop light bulbs do damage. Make the dogs in the second phase slightly slower. Remove the train entirely from the third phase. Remove the penguins from the last phase and replace them with like some spikes that shoot up on the ground. That would make the fight a lot less tedious and unfair. And you may say that I'm just making it easier, but I'm just trying to make it less unfair. So yeah, in my opinion, Beppy the Clown is the worst fight in Cuphead, and after beating it on Expert, I'm glad I never have to go back to it. Yes, I do personally think the best Cuphead boss is Sally Staggerplay. I know this pick is somewhat unpopular, so allow me to explain. Unlike Beppy the Clown, the smoke dash is useful in this fight but not nearly impossible without it. The first phase has you interrupting Sally's wedding, to which So is reasonably upset, so she tries to defeat you with many attacks, all being interesting and not too hard, yet not too easy either. Eventually she drives off to her new house with her husband where she finds you. Her kids also try to throw baby bottles at you, which fall at a reasonable pace, giving you time to dodge. Same with the mouse wind-up toys. In the third phase, Sally becomes a giant cardboard goddess. She has meteors with Perrys inside to dodge the big waves. This phase is my favorite because of how creative and visually pleasing it is. It looks like nothing else in the game, which is nice. In her final phase, Sally becomes an angel during her standing ovation, where an umbrella goes across the stage with roses falling. I don't know why, but I really like this phase for some reason. I just like Sally's design in this one. Now, this fight is amazing, but what really gets this up to number 1 is the music and background. The music track is my favorite in the entire game. It's a catchy tune played over a tap dancing melody. I love songs that incorporate tap dancing. One of my favorite songs from the Steven Universe movie is No Matter What, just for the tap dancing alone. And the background is also my favorite in the game. In the first phase, her husband is running across the stage, waiting for the play to continue. In the second phase, it's a watercolor house. In the third phase, although the least out of the 4 backgrounds, is still pretty cool, and the final phase has the actors previously seen all taking a bow. Also, I want to mention, in the Switch version of the game, there's a much more dark path to this fight. You can kill the husband, which leads to a nunnery instead of a house. The nuns threw rulers for some reason, and some can be parried. The third phase has the husband back as a god, using Cupid to throw fireballs, and the nun is seen taking a bow at the end opposed to the usual husband and kids. For all these reasons, Sally Staggerplay is my favorite Cuphead boss.